Hello friends, in this video I will explain you what is the difference between the set statement and the append procedure in SAS. Now many of us are aware that the set statement and append does the same thing, but there is a slight difference in both the functions, or you can say that both the methods. The major difference is that append procedure is much quicker, but the only disadvantage of the append procedure is that it can only be done with two data set compared to the set statement, where you can concatenate or you can merge more than two data set. I will use this two data set in this example to show which one is better and which one is more beneficial as far as processing time is concerned and memory space is concerned, and which one is not good according to different circumstances. So I'm going to be compiling and creating these two data sets here. The two data sets are part 1 and part 2. In that there are variables in the first one, ID and name, and in the second one, ID, age and sex. Now I'm going to be using this data set procedure, and I'm going to be creating this new data set called mix1, and in that I'm going to be copying this part 1 and part 2, which is set. There is a difference between set and merge. Set would be like if you have total 20 records in two data set, there would be 20 records, compared to the merge, which is a different logic. So if you see that I have run this, and you can see in this there were 5 observation rate from the work 1 and 5 from work 2, and this option full timer give the complete statistics of the processing time and the memory it takes, and the statistics related to the CPU time. But because this is a very small data, so there is not much time you can expect. Only with the large data you will come to know which is processing faster, but the memory is 265K it is taking, and I'm going to show you why it is taking more when I'll explain you the proc append procedure. So when I print this statement, it's going to be displaying like this. This has 10 records, and it is like the set statement would take part 1 here and part 2 beneath that, rather than the merge one. Merge one would mostly deal with the common variable and would have 5 records. It would have it here rather than down. So set statement, merge, it's in a vertical merge. Similarly, the append procedure, I am keeping this proc append base part 2 and data part 1. That means this part 2 would be the data here, and it's going part 1 would be the I'm going to append it. And the only difference here is that we have to use the for statement, because there is additional variable in part 1 called name, which is not there in the part 2. Similarly, you have to use the force function when the length is different, or maybe the in both the data set. I'm going to be using the for statement here and using this option full timer to show the statistics of the processing time, and I'm going to run this statement. If you see that it only took 71K memory compared to the 256K we had for set, and the system CPU time is 0.00 second. For this set statement was 0.01, so that means proc append is much quicker in processing time, and it takes much less space in memory. The only difference is that when I because this part 2 is the base here, part 1 is the data which we want to append in the part 2. So this, it will look like this. It's going to look like this, slightly different, because the part 2 is going to be the original, so it will remain like this, and part 1 is going to be beneath that, because the original one, we have to remember that the base one is the part 2, so it's going to be like that, and it's going to take all the variables of the original one, which is the base, and it's just going to add here the ID from part 1, but it's not going to add the name, because the base, the original one, is part 2. Similarly, if I do here part 1 base and part 2 here, and when I append this and when I use this part 1 here, so it's going to be ID and name, the original variables in part 1, because part 1 is the base. So if you can see the comparison, the proc append has the limitations, because it's only take the variables from the original which is in the base, compared to the set statement, where in the set statement, if you see here, in the set statement, it takes all the variables from both the data sets. So proc append is much more quicker than set statement, and the set statement, the difference between the set statement and append is primarily because the set statements concatenates and it reads all the data from the part 1 and part 2, and it concatenates or not merge but concatenates. And comparatively, proc append just process this data, the base, it keep it as it is, it only just added this. So if the size of this base is more, like the part 1 is more and the part 2 is little, so I will advise you to use the proc append procedure, because it will not read this part 1, it's just going to read the part 2 in the proc append. So proc append has limitations, but it's much quicker if you have small data and you are using the 2 data sets, and the part 1 has large amount of data, part 2 has few, so proc append that time would be useful. But set would be more useful if you have many data sets, and if you want to set that concatenates all the data set together, there are more than 2. So set statement that time will be you, and the set statement will have all the variables from both the data set compared to the append statement. So I hope you like this video. You can try this and you can give me your feedback and comments. You will be more than welcome.